Every morning, two versions of your future wake up with you. One whispers, "Stay where you are. You can begin tomorrow." The other says nothing. It simply gets out of bed and takes one small step before excuses have time to speak. At first, the difference seems tiny. A few quiet minutes, one completed task, one promise kept. But repeat that choice for a year, and those two futures may no longer look like the same life. This is the story of a young man who spent years waiting for opportunity until an old lantern keeper taught him that opportunity often arrives after the work has already begun. Welcome to Jerry Tales, where simple stories leave lasting lessons. Settle in and listen closely, because this story may change how you use the first quiet hour of your day. Beyond a line of green hills stood Riverbend, a peaceful village of stone cottages beside a wide river. Near the edge of the village lived Caleb, a gifted young woodcarver. He could turn plain cedar into a bird that looked ready to fly, but most of what he wanted to create was still waiting inside his imagination. Caleb dreamed of owning the finest workshop in Riverbend. He wanted merchants from distant towns to know his name. Most of all, he wanted to give his mother a life without worry. Yet every evening, Caleb spoke proudly about what he would do tomorrow, and every morning, tomorrow slipped away. He stayed late at the tea house, describing his plans, returned home tired, and slept until the market was alive. By the time he opened his workshop, customers had gone elsewhere. Whenever his mother asked about his dreams, Caleb always had a reason. "I need better tools. I need a larger workshop. I need someone important to notice me." He never said the one sentence that frightened him most: "I need to become more disciplined." Across the village lived Mara, Riverbend's lantern keeper. Each evening she lit the street lamps, and before the first morning bell, she returned to extinguish them. Mara was nearly 70. She was never hurried, and somehow never late. One evening, she passed Caleb's workshop and found him sitting beside an unfinished cabinet. Another customer changed his mind. Caleb complained, "People with money and connections always get the opportunities." Mara looked at the half-carved wood, the blunt tools, and the dust-covered bench. Then she asked, "What time did you begin today?" Caleb avoided her eyes. "That has nothing to do with it." Mara lifted her lantern. "Meet me at the old fountain tomorrow before the first bell. Bring one sharp tool and one small piece of wood." "What will you teach me?" Caleb asked. "First, we will discover whether you truly want to learn." That night, Caleb promised himself he would go, but when he opened his eyes, sunlight was already crossing the floor. He ran to the fountain, but Mara was gone. On the stone rim, she had left an unlit lantern beside a note. It said, "An unlit lantern cannot blame the darkness." The next morning, Caleb arrived just as the first bell rang. Mara was already walking away. "I am here," he called. Without turning, she replied, "You arrived for the second promise, not the first." On the third morning, he failed again. That evening, Caleb went to Mara's cottage and began another apology. She gently stopped him. "Your future does not need another promise," she said. "It needs proof." Caleb finally understood that his morning problem began the night before. He left the tea house early, sharpened his knife, prepared his clothes, and blew out his candle before the night grew late. Before dawn, Caleb woke to wind moving through the trees. He wanted to return to sleep, but placed his feet on the cold floor before the excuse could grow stronger. When he reached the fountain, Mara was waiting. She smiled. Good. Now carve one straight line. Caleb stared at her. That is the lesson. That is today's lesson. He carved the line. The next morning, she asked for another line. Then she taught him to sketch before carving, sharpen every tool, and clean his bench. Caleb became impatient. When will you teach me the secret to success? Mara pointed toward the sleeping village. Listen, there were no carts rattling over stones, no customers interrupting, no friends asking him to leave his work. There was only the river, the birds, and his own breathing. This hour is not powerful because it is early, Mara said. It is powerful because you have protected it. Give it one clear purpose, and it will begin shaping you. For 14 mornings, Caleb worked before the first bell. Some days he felt inspired. Other days he felt nothing, but he worked anyway. He stopped asking, "Do I feel motivated?" He began asking, "What is the next useful step?" One morning, he finished a drawer. The next, he corrected a crooked joint. He planned orders and repaired a roof crack before the damage spread. None of these actions looked life-changing. That was exactly why most people ignored them. Weeks passed. Caleb's workshop became cleaner, his hands steadier, and his work more reliable. Every completed task became evidence that he could trust himself. Soon, the mayor announced Riverbend's annual craft festival. A respected merchant from the capital would attend and offer a large commission to one craftsperson. The old Caleb would have spent weeks imagining victory and started at the last moment. This time, he quietly chose a piece of walnut and began the next morning. He built a writing chest with hidden compartments and carved Riverbend's hills beneath a rising sun. Each morning, the chest changed a little, and so did Caleb. 3 nights before the festival, a violent storm struck Riverbend. Rain hammered the roofs, wind tore branches from trees, and water rushed through the market streets. Before dawn, Caleb hurried to his workshop. The repaired roof held, and his writing chest was safe. But outside, several market stalls had collapsed. An elderly basket maker stood helplessly beside her broken stand. Caleb could have returned to his own work. Instead, he opened his organized tool case and began helping. By the first bell, he had repaired her stall and helped others lift their tables from the water. 2 days later, the merchant examined Caleb's chest, tracing the carved sunrise and testing each compartment. "This is excellent work," she said. "How long did it take?" Caleb thought about all the mornings that had seemed too small to matter. "A little at a time," he answered. The merchant offered him the commission, but people also remembered who had rebuilt the basket maker's stall before sunrise. Caleb finally understood that discipline had given him more than success. It had given him enough control over his own life to be useful to someone else. That evening, Caleb visited Mara. "Your challenge changed my life," he told her. Mara shook her head. "The challenge only showed you a door. You walked through it." She handed him the same lantern, now holding a small flame. On its base were 5 words. "Light only the next step." Caleb understood. He had wasted years waiting to see the entire road. Better tools, more money, the right customer, the perfect opportunity. But no lantern reveals the whole journey. It gives enough light for one step, then another, then another. Years later, Caleb's workshop became one of the region's most respected. Yet his first hour remained simple. He planned, practiced, and completed one important task. Above his bench hung Mara's lantern, not as a symbol of waking early, but as a reminder that a meaningful life is built by keeping small promises when no one is watching. Now, let us leave Riverbend and talk about your life. This story is not saying that everyone must wake at 4 in the morning. Rest matters, and people have different lives and schedules. The deeper lesson is this: protect a quiet part of your day before the world begins making demands on you. Give that time one purpose. Keep the promise even when motivation is absent. For many, that protected time is the first morning hour. For you, it may be 20 minutes to exercise, study, or build the idea you keep talking about. Do not underestimate a small action because it creates no immediate applause. Roots grow in silence long before a tree offers shade. So here is your challenge from Jerry Tales. For the next 7 days, choose one important task before you go to sleep. Prepare everything you need, then protect the first quiet part of your day and work on that task before distractions enter. Do not try to transform your whole life in one morning. Light only the next step. At the end of 7 days, ask yourself, do I trust myself more than I did a week ago? Because real discipline is not punishment. It is self-trust built through promises kept. If this story gave you something worth carrying into tomorrow, like the video and subscribe to Jerry Tales for more motivational stories and meaningful life lessons. And tell us in the comments, what is one important task you will protect time for tomorrow? Your answer may become the first step toward a future that has been waiting for you to begin.